I find it very interesting when the same equation, this is Newton's second law, remember F equals ma, where we changed A to delta V delta T and wrote that F equals m delta V delta T cross multiplied by the change in time to obtain this equation. Remember that this is impulse and this is the change in momentum. It explains our ability to kick a soccer ball and excel at sports, and it also explains car crash survival. How so? Well, in sports, there's a two-word phrase that almost all coaches use. If you play sports, you've heard it. Whether it's baseball, golf, soccer, it doesn't matter what you play. You've heard coaches say, follow through. I'm just going to abbreviate that, through. Follow through. That's because in sports, the mass of a ball that we're kicking or a ball that we're hitting with a bat is fixed, and we'd like delta V, the change in velocity, to be as big as possible. We want the soccer ball to go as far, want the golf ball to go far down the fairway, want to hit a home run. So it's delta V that we want to be as big as possible. So for delta V to be as big as possible, you have to make impulse as big as possible because we can't change the mass of the ball. We don't have a lot of control over the force that our foot generates on the ball. That's genetics and training. So you have some control over it, but it's delta T. By following through, by increasing the time that we're in contact with the ball, or put the club head in contact with the ball or the bat in contact with the ball, the longer we're in contact, the bigger F delta T is, so the bigger M delta V is. Therefore, the change in velocity is as large as possible by following through. So that's the sports explanation. Now in a car crash survival, delta V, that's fixed. And the mass is also fixed. We know that we're going from 55 miles an hour or 30 miles an hour down to zero when two cars collide. The final velocity is going to be zero. And what we do have control over is the time that the crash represents. How long does the crash take? That's why seatbelts are mandatory. That's why we have airbags. That's why we pad surfaces. And we have crumple zones on cars so that the car, as it comes in contact with something like a brick wall, will crumple in here, which takes time. We will be protected by our seatbelt, which will stretch, and there's a braking system which will brake us from our speed to zero. An airbag will deploy, which further extends the time of the crash. And steering wheels are padded. Anything that we might come into contact with is padded, all to make delta T big. Think about it. If we can make the crash time go from 0.0001 seconds to 0.01 seconds, that's a factor of 100. So we can reduce the force on our bodies by a factor of 100 by having all these items designed into the car to elongate the time, which is the thing we can control in the crash, so that we minimize the force because the masses of the cars and their change in velocity is fixed during the crash. So follow through in sports and surviving a car crash are all related to the same equation, Newton's second law, in the impulse momentum form.